thing. Okay, so I'm saying here in any piece of fiction, so we tell a story, like when you say John went to London yesterday, if you say, for example, this sentence, John went to London yesterday, you give here the simple component of a story, like you have people, you have event, you have place and time. And this, of course, does not make a story only. So you have to add something else. But if you say John went to London yesterday to bring his son back, he went quickly because his son fled there, and so on. So the idea is that you have to add something here. So here we have a story. We have a story because we have a series of events happening one after the other and making a possible narrative because I think this is the idea, because there's always time sequence, one after another, one after another, one after another. And this is always important in a story. When you sit and talk to your friends about something, you tell them, you speak for half an hour, for example. And here you organize your events and you organize your story, you know, bit by bit, mainly according to time, mainly according to, you know, when this has happened and so on. So this idea, I think, is very important here to say in fiction. The question of time is very important in a story. So that's why here I say the idea of chronology or time is emphasized to make a story possible. Well, now another message yeah, anyway, we'll come back. So the idea here, I'm saying that there is a chronology or time is emphasized to make a story possible. Such a sentence would also make a story if the reader gets enough information about the background of the event, the characters of John and his son, and event which leads up to the son's departure from home. The idea here, I'm saying, is that yes, there is organization, there is the events one after another according to time, yesterday, last year, last month, last week, tomorrow, after tomorrow, etc., etc. All this really is what we call here, if you like, you know, chronology or time, how time or how events really are organized one after another. That's what we mean by chronology. And thus here we say, we can define a story as follows, and this is the first definition, as you can see: a series of events arranged in their time sequence and interrelated by a sense of causality, a sense of really causality. That means here, later on, we shall see that there is always something happened because of the other. And I think the idea here, in a way, the question of causality is also related to plot more than the story, as I will show you here in a minute. So we say a series of events arranged in their time sequence and interrelated, interconnected because by a sense of causality, that means John went to London because his wife, John went to London because his son, John did this because somebody did that. So when you say because, you know, this is what we mean by causality. And again, we say the essential part in this definition is time sequence or chronology, which really makes the story. Whereas the interrelatedness or the interrelated by a sense of causality is really, as I say, closer to plot. Okay, so a story, in a story, time is important. Chronology, that means how events come after another. Whereas in a plot, we say because something did this, because of that. And this causality really is closer to what we say the plot, as we shall see. So time leads to story, whereas causality leads to plot. Here we have to adopt, or we shall adopt the move, or this, I should say, the above definition to refer to story. Generally, we can read stories and novels primarily for entertainment. Yes, in a way we say that. Because why do we read a story? Because we want to pass time. We want to enjoy passing the time and listening to things. Of course, we get something. Of course, we get something. But first, we get entertained. We get entertained. And really, this idea of entertainment is very important in fiction. And the question of learning lessons, learning ideas, maybe, this thing comes later. So notice here, I'm saying primarily for entertainment. The most rewarding and gratifying story is the one that provides both entertainment and knowledge, meaning the best novel, the best thing really is when you feel, when you see both entertainment and knowledge, both at the same time. And I think that's the value of literature, because you are happy with it in terms of its own form, in terms of its style, in terms of language, and so on and so forth. And yet, of course, because of the ideas and the lessons that you learn from those. Now, notice here, I'm saying a story achieves great elevation and distinction when it tackles the human problems and tries to give suggestions to various actual dilemmas. Yeah, because in stories always we see how people talk about society, about their life, and about their etc. So here, briefly, I give, as you can see, about story. The final, I say, the final paragraph, the last, because only here you can see 3 paragraphs. Finally, we say a story can be divided into, I say, a story of situation and a story of character. A story of situation, a story of character. A story of situation talks about a situation. Story of character talks about a character, a person, a man, a woman, etc. Notice, the story of situation is the one which deals with the examination of certain social or political problems of any given time, about a situation in any society, about a problem, a social problem, political problem, any problem, psychological problem, a certain situation in a certain society. Whereas a story of character here, I say, is a story which centers more on the human being, more on the person, more on the individuality, more on the character himself rather than the society. Notice here, it investigates the psychology of man and his motives in life. But of course, again, we say, well, this division, again, is artificial. Because always in stories, we have the society and we have persons. We have man, woman, people, and the society. Or if you like, you say, well, society is people in a way. Yeah, of course. But I'm saying a novel, if it talks about one character, one person more, and it concentrates more on him or her, that means we call here as a story of character. Really, that's the idea I want to show you here about story. Okay? So this is the first element of fiction we call a story. In any piece of writing, any novel, any short story, any poem, any play, anything, there is always a story. And please always say, and our Egyptian people, our Egyptian friends, they call this Hattuta. Isn't it? There is a Hattuta or there's Hikaya, isn't it?
Yes.
Hello? Huh? Yeah.
Yes.
There is always something you have to say. So really, this is the first important part. And now I move to the second one, which is plot, as you can see. Plot, as I said to you in a minute, is again, as I said, the arrangement of events according to causality. Something caused something to happen. Something happened because of something else. And that's what we mean by plot. And really in Arabic we say al-hibka. How do you connect? How do you plot your events? How do you make them really strong? How do you make them attractive? And really this is the idea when we say a plot. As I said, is how to connect your, absolutely to connect your events together. So the very simple definition of plot here is provided by A.M. Forster when he says the action which forms the backbone of the story. Notice the backbone, meaning there's no novel, no short story without a plot. And a good novel is always because of its plot. And that's why he said backbone. The backbone means the main, absolutely the main important thing in a story. Notice here, I say this means without a plot, we can't have a novel or a short story. That's why our previous definition of the story as being a narrative of events arranged in their time sequence would have to be modified a little bit, slightly modified to accommodate the implication of the plot. When I say in a story, the time sequence of action is emphasized, but in a plot, as I said, it's used to arouse the reader's curiosity, to make us curious, because we want to see what happens next. And that's the idea about curiosity, and to introduce a sense of mystery into the action. Always when you want to say, yes, what happens next? So this is what we mean by curiosity. You are curious to know what happens next. And I think that's what we do always. When we read something, we want to know what